It was supposed to be a gift to myself. After my divorce, I bought a 30-foot trawler named the Good Son, even though I didn't have a son and wasn't a good man. Fishing was the only thing that made sense anymore. Alone on open water, nobody could demand anything from me. I left port at dawn, aiming for a spot 60 miles offshore. A deep trench out there was known to tug giants up from the dark. They said if you had the patience, and something to prove, you might hook something older than memory. By mid-afternoon, the sun hovered white and brutal, and I hadn't gotten a single bite. I started to drift, dozing with the hum of the engine and the slap of waves against fiberglass. When the rod bent, violently, I nearly fell overboard. I grabbed it instinctively. The line screamed out like it was snagged on a submarine. I braced, feet sliding on the wet deck. Whatever was on the end of that line wasn't fighting like a fish. There were no darts, no surges, just weight. Unyielding. Like trying to pull up a cinder block from 1,000 feet down. I reeled and slack with hands cramping, not realizing I'd been clenching my jaw so hard it started to ache. After 20 minutes, I saw something surface. It wasn't a fish. It looked like a bundle of burlap, soaked through and bloated, tangled in line and weeds. I had to drag it up with a gaff hook. The moment it hit the deck, a sour, sweet smell rushed up my nose, something like rotten algae mixed with iron. It was a body bag. Old, but intact. Someone had weighted it, wrapped it in rusted chains and thick netting. A few barnacles clung to the seams. I didn't want to touch it, but I did. The zipper was mostly corroded, but I peeled it back enough to see what was inside. A face. Waterlogged, but clearly a man's. Pale. Mouth open wide, eyes bloated shut. His skin had taken on that yellowish tone you only see in corpses, slick with what looked like sea lice. He looked like me. I fell back, slipping in fish slime and rope. I didn't scream. I just lay there, heart pounding, eyes locked on the bag. After a minute, I stood up, trying to breathe through my shirt. I leaned over the side of the boat, and was about to tip the bag back into the sea when I saw it. There was another one. About 30 yards off, drifting slowly, a second shape floated just beneath the surface, its outline unmistakable. I scanned the horizon, now seeing more. One there. Two more near the stern. All at different distances, bobbing like lazy buoys. I killed the engine out of instinct. The silence was instant and wrong. The water was too calm. The bags weren't drifting randomly, they were circling. I turned back to the first body bag. It was empty. No zipper. No chains. Just a wet outline on the deck and the faint scent of iron hanging in the air. I checked the GPS. My location hadn't changed. 60 miles offshore. Still, I felt like I was being watched. I went below deck to grab the flare gun, and when I came back up, there was a new bag on the deck. Dripping. I hadn't heard a splash. The zipper was already open. And from inside, something was breathing. I didn't want to move. My feet were cold, rooted to the deck by a kind of horror I'd only ever read about in books. The flare gun trembled in my hand. The thing in the body bag was still. But I could hear it. Wet, ragged inhalations, like someone learning how to breathe again through fluid-filled lungs. I backed away. The open ocean surrounded me in all directions, flat and dull under a colorless sky. I had no radio signal, no help, no one to shout to but God, and I'd burned that bridge years ago. Something shifted inside the bag. Not just breathing, stretching. Pushing against the confines of that plastic and burlap like a child testing the womb's walls. Then a hand emerged. Pale and slick, fingers bloated and twitching like they were learning what hands were for. The nails were translucent, curling in on themselves like the shells of some deep-sea thing. I raised the flare gun and fired without thinking. The flare burst in red fire and hissed into the bag. The bag screamed. Not a human scream. A reedy, high-pitched whine like steam escaping from a dying animal. The body spasmed, flailed, then fell still. Smoke drifted from the torn plastic. I stumbled to the stern, vomiting over the rail. Salt water and bile. When I wiped my mouth and turned around, the flare gun was gone. The bag was gone. In its place was water, just slick water pooling on the deck like it had never been dry. And then I saw myself again. Floating 20 feet off the port side, face up in the water, staring skyward with dead eyes. My own face. My own jacket. My boots. I opened my mouth to yell, but no sound came. And then it sank. Not all at once, slowly, deliberately. As though it were being pulled, inch, by something beneath. Something hungry. I spun the key in the ignition. The engine sputtered, then caught with a cough. I turned hard to starboard, gunning toward nowhere, just needing to move, to leave the dead behind. I didn't care about navigation. I didn't care about fuel. But the boat didn't move. I looked over the side. Lines. Heavy fishing lines. 5 or 6 of them, all snared around the hull, dragging downward. They hadn't been there minutes ago. I followed the lines into the water. I shouldn't have looked. The silhouettes were rising. Human shapes. Dozens. All drifting upward with impossible grace. Arms extended, mouths open like they were screaming beneath the surface. Some still wore fishing gear, vests, hats. One had a rusted knife buried in his chest. Another had no face at all. Just smooth, pale skin where the features should have been. They weren't swimming. They were being pulled. Dragged upward. Toward me. I cut the lines, hacking wildly with the emergency hatchet. One rope snapped, then another. My hands blistered. I didn't stop. When the last line fell away, the boat lurched free. I turned the wheel, aimed for the sun, and didn't look back. I reached shore around midnight. The engine was coughing its last breath. I ran up the dock, hysterical, looking for anyone. But the harbor was empty. Every slip was full. Every boat was dark. And from each one, a slick trail of seawater led onto the dock, small footprints, side by side, walking inland. I never went back to sea. But sometimes, late at night, I hear something tapping on the windows. Not knocking, just tapping. Like fingernails. Learning. I joined the crew of the Sea Finch on a dare. 3 days offshore, hunting yellowfin in deep Pacific swells with 3 guys I barely knew. I told myself it would be a story to brag about. I didn't expect it to be the one story I could never tell. First day was uneventful. Gray sky, calm sea, nothing but the droning engine and the low chatter of the crew. Marcus, the skipper, didn't talk much. Just smoked and stared into the water like it owed him money. Greg and Eli were brothers, both with the jittery energy of people trying to forget something. That night, I took the middle bunk. Waves slapped the hull like something trying to get in. When I closed my eyes, I dreamed of a mouth. Just a mouth. Floating in blackness. Round, toothless, constantly yawning wider. I felt like I was being pulled into it, not physically, but through my thoughts, my memories. I woke up shaking, my pillow soaked with sweat. No one else mentioned bad dreams the next morning, but none of us made eye contact over breakfast. Second day, Marcus said we were drifting into an uncharted basin, something deeper than expected. He showed us the sonar, a flat bottom at first, then a sheer drop that didn't register an end. He called it a blue hole. Fish go missing down there, he said, lighting a new cigarette. Like they forget they're supposed to come back up. Greg laughed, but it was the kind of laugh that ends fast and doesn't touch the eyes. Later that afternoon, Eli started reeling something in. Hard. Line screamed. Rod bent in a perfect arc. The kind of fight you only get from something enormous. We all crowded around, shouting and slapping backs. Then it stopped. Line went slack. The rod went still. Eli reeled it in. The hook was gone. Not snapped. Unclipped. Like something had pressed the release. What the hell? Eli muttered. His hands were shaking. Greg found a single scale on the deck. Silver, palm-sized, still wet. None of us recognized it. Greg tossed it overboard. That night I couldn't sleep. The others were restless, too. I could hear Eli muttering in his bunk, something about mouths. Greg had turned the radio on low, static and a soft voice whispering numbers. When I finally drifted off, the dream came back. The mouth again. But this time, I could see past it. Down into it. And there were people inside. Faces pressed together, eyes shut, their mouths open in perfect silence, all slowly drifting deeper. I recognized one of them. My father. He drowned when I was 7. I remember the cops telling my mom they never found his body. Now I knew where it had gone. I sat up in bed gasping. That's when I noticed the sound. Not the sea. Not the hull. A gurgling, wet and rhythmic, like someone trying to breathe through water. I stepped out onto the deck. Marcus was there. Staring over the side. Not moving. I walked to him and realized his eyes were open, but unfocused. His mouth opened and closed like he was trying to speak but couldn't remember how. Then he turned to me. And in the reflection of his pupils I saw it. Just for a moment. A wide, spiraling mouth rising from below the boat. I didn't scream. Not because I was brave, because I couldn't. My throat locked up. My brain stuttered. I just stared into Marcus's eyes as they filled with seawater. Actual water. Leaking from the corners like tears. Then he stepped backward. One step. Then another. And without a sound, he fell overboard. I rushed to the railing, yelling, searching for him. The water was dark. Too dark. No splash, no bubbles, nothing. Just smooth, black water closing over him like he never existed. Greg and Eli stumbled onto deck, half awake and already panicking. He just fell. I stammered. He wasn't right. Eli grabbed the searchlight and scanned the water, but there was nothing to see. No movement. No ripple. Greg kept muttering. It's real, like he'd been waiting for this. We radioed Mayday. No response. We tried every frequency. Static. Greg took the wheel and steered us away from the trench, but the boat didn't move. The current had stopped. We were suspended. The sea was glass. Then the sonar beeped. Just once. And the screen lit up with movement. Not fish. Not schools. Just shape. Big. Rising. Centered directly below us. Eli backed away from the monitor, shaking his head. This is where they took Ben, he whispered. I turned. Who's Ben? He didn't answer. Just walked below deck. Greg wouldn't look at me. Last year. Same spot. We came out with a different crew. We thought we were just drunk, that maybe Ben fell in. We never said anything. We left him. He swallowed. They left something behind, though. What do you mean? Instead of answering, Greg opened the cooler. It was full of fish. Or it had been. Now it was full of water. Just seawater. And something else. Something pink floating. I thought it was seaweed. Until it twitched. It was a tongue. Human. I slammed the cooler shut and stumbled back. Below deck, Eli started screaming. We rushed down the steps. The cabin lights were flickering, and Eli was on the floor, clawing at his chest. There were voices coming from the walls. Soft, breathy. Familiar. Greg froze in the doorway. That's Ben, he whispered. I listened. The voice was muffled, but it kept repeating a single phrase. Let it in. Eli stopped moving. His mouth was open. Wider than it should be. His jaw was distended, eyes rolled back. From inside his throat, something moved. Greg screamed. I dragged him out of the cabin, slammed the door shut behind us. I think I heard Eli laughing. Up on deck, the sky was darker now, darker than night should be. No stars. Just clouds churning silently, a perfect circle above the boat. We were inside it. A mouth in the sky. The sea bubbled. The water around the hull started to drain away, not into the trench, but upward. Like the ocean was being sucked into the clouds. I started the engine. It caught. Greg hit the throttle. We aimed the bow anywhere but here. The water churned beneath us like something thrashing, angry we'd left the table before it could feed. We broke free. The sky closed behind us like it had never opened. We never found Eli. Never found Marcus. Greg and I swore we'd never talk about it again. We sold the sea finch for scrap, never fished again. But sometimes I hear the phrase, whispered through drains, through the hollow of a shell, from the center of dreams. Let it in. I took the charter job because it was short. Just 3 days at sea, guiding a pair of trust fund brats on a tuna run. Easy money. They didn't care about fish. They wanted drone footage for their travel vlog and something to brag about on Instagram. Day 1 was fine. Flat water. Good sun. The Mabel June handled like a dream. At sunset, we cracked beers. They joked about sharks and skinny dipped off the stern. I kept my distance. They were still drunk when they went below deck. I stayed up, watching the water. There's something about the ocean at night, it becomes an entirely different thing. No longer beautiful. Just vast and indifferent. That's when I heard it. At first, I thought it was one of the clients screwing around. But it wasn't coming from below deck. It was coming from the water. A voice. Soft, slurred, like someone talking in their sleep. Right next to the hull. I leaned over the side and listened. It was definitely speaking. In English. Repeating a phrase over and over. Help me find my mouth. I recoiled. It stopped the moment I moved. I checked the depth gauge. 37 meters. Nothing beneath us but open water. I told myself it was the engine. Or a seabird. Second night, it happened again. Louder. The clients were asleep by 9, snoring below deck. I shut off the engine just to be sure. Total silence. The sea was calm. No wind. And then the voice. Help me find my mouth. This time it was clearer. Feminine. Wet. As though someone were talking through a mouthful of seawater. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I noticed something off. The fish radar was lit up, but the lines stayed still. The bait wasn't touched. Not even nibbled. I checked the lines and found the hooks stripped clean. No tearing, no bite marks. Just missing bait. Like something had delicately removed it. The clients were oblivious. They filmed slow-motion shots of themselves swinging gaffs they didn't know how to use. I kept scanning the horizon. Watching for changes. Waiting for the voice. It came back at sundown. Different this time. Not just one voice. Many. Layered. Overlapping. Male, female, old, young. All whispering in perfect sync. Help us find our mouths. It came from both sides of the boat. Like a crowd was treading water just out of sight. I spun the spotlight across the waves. Nothing. But when I swept the beam toward the bow, I saw them. Hands. Dozens of them. Just the fingers, reaching above the surface, splayed out like lilies on a pond. Motionless. Pale. Skin like wax paper. And then they submerged. All at once. Like they'd never been there. I didn't tell the clients. I told myself I was seeing things. Salt-laced hallucinations. Sleep deprivation. That night, I tied myself to the chair on the flybridge so I wouldn't go near the water. Still, the voices came back. Not asking anymore. Telling. You have a mouth. Give it to us. That's when I felt something tap the hull. Light. Rhythmic. Like someone gently knocking. It continued until dawn. When I went below deck, the clients were gone. No blood. No struggle. Just a puddle of water on the floor and a faint trail of salt across the floorboards, leading back up to the deck, and over the side. I never found them. Just 2 sets of wet footprints. Standing side by side at the rail. Facing out to sea. I didn't call it in. I know how that sounds. 2 missing clients, no witnesses. No struggle, no damage. Just a damp deck and silence. But I knew what they'd say. I'd killed them. Dumped the bodies. And if I told the truth? They'd say I snapped. So I steered the Mabel June back toward the coast. Slowly. Trying to pretend I hadn't seen what I saw. That the sea was just the sea again. But about 20 miles from shore, the engine died. No sputter, no warning. Just silence. I radioed for help. Static. Every channel. GPS blinked red. Then I heard it again. Not from the water this time. From below deck. I descended slowly, the smell of salt thick and wrong. The puddle where the clients vanished was dry now, but the trail of salt still glittered faintly in the cabin light. It stopped at the head of my bunk. Inside? The mattress had rotted through, as if soaked in seawater for years. And in the center of the foam, embedded like a fossil, was a tooth. Not human. Wider. Flattened. As if made for grinding. I touched it. It was warm. I backed out and sealed the cabin shut. That night, the ocean changed. Waves vanished. Not calmed, vanished. The sea went flat, glassy, without a single ripple. I could hear everything, my own breath, the shifting of my bones, the slow heartbeat behind my ears. And the voices came again. All around me. Where is your mouth? Then the hull flexed. Like something was pressing against it from below. Not striking. Pushing. I ran to the bow and saw them again. The hands. Hundreds now. Not moving, just floating. Palms up. Waiting. Some had jewelry. Wedding rings. One had a child's bracelet, the beads spelling out Katie. I was not alone. They were waiting for me. That's when I made the mistake of looking over the edge. Just for a second. There were faces beneath the water. Not floating, attached. Hundreds. Maybe thousands. A wall of pale, bloated faces pressed against the hull below the waterline. Each one with the same expression. Mouths missing. Just smooth, skin-covered space where lips and teeth should have been. Like the sea had sealed them shut. I staggered back, tripped over the anchor rope, and hit the deck. And that's when I noticed it. The sounds weren't just voices. They were breath. The sea itself was breathing. In. And out. With each inhale, I felt my chest tighten. With each exhale, I felt something leave me. I crawled toward the wheelhouse, desperate for anything, flare gun, distress beacon, a knife. Anything to feel human again. I fired the flare. It went straight up. Hung there. Then winked out. The sky stayed black. No stars. No moon. No clouds. Just void. The boat began to list. Slowly, gently, tilting toward the side where the voices were loudest. I knew what they wanted. I knew what they'd taken. The clients? Already part of it. Now they wanted my voice. My mouth. That's when I remembered the old trick. Bleed into salt water, and nothing living touches you. I cut my palm with a fillet knife, let the blood drip over the side. The voices screamed. Sharp. Panicked. The hands vanished. The engine coughed to life. Just like that, the sea was sea again. I made it back by morning. They never found the clients. I sold the boat for scrap. But I still hear them. When I shave. When I open my mouth to speak and forget what I was about to say. A whisper, just behind my teeth. Where is your mouth? We were collecting water samples for a research project funded by some environmental think tank. Just me and Dr. Kaminsky, 70 miles offshore in the Gulf, aboard a converted research trawler with too many blinking lights and not enough answers. We were looking for signs of hypoxic zones, those dead areas where oxygen vanishes and fish go belly up in slow, silent spirals. Kaminsky was obsessed with one particular trench. Said it had a temperature profile that made no sense. The data hinted at a thermocline, an abrupt shift in water temp, miles deeper than it should have been. We dropped the first sensor. It descended smoothly. Readings normal at first. Then it hit the anomaly. A sudden temperature drop. Drastic. From 76 degrees to 32 in a single meter. Then the signal cut out. Kaminsky tapped the monitor, cursed under his breath, and prepped the second sensor. Must be a glitch, he muttered. But I saw his hands trembling. The second sensor vanished too. Same depth. Same drop. Same silence. I told him we should mark it and report back. He disagreed. We're here. We measure. That night I couldn't sleep. The boat creaked like it was settling into something. The water was black, oily, reflecting nothing. Then I saw the light. Faint, maybe 200 yards off the starboard bow. It pulsed like a lighthouse submerged. Kaminsky saw it too. We stood on the deck, watching the soft flashes. No sound. No movement. Just that rhythm, slow, deliberate. A signal. But not for us. Then the fish started surfacing. Thousands. Not swimming, rising. Dead. All facing the same direction, eyes wide, mouths frozen in perfect circles. They made no sound, but their bodies bumped against the hull like polite warnings. Kaminsky was delighted. He took photos, tossed one of the fish on deck, started dissecting it. I turned away before I threw up. By morning, the fish were gone. No wind, no current, just gone. He dropped a third sensor. This one stayed active longer. Long enough to broadcast something else. The temperature readings flatlined. But the pressure gauge climbed. Fast. Something was rising. Not water. Not gas. Wait. We couldn't see it, but the sonar picked it up. A column of denser water, 10 meters wide, shooting straight up from the trench. Kaminsky called it an upwelling event. His voice was trembling with awe. Then the comms died. The ship's interior lights shut off. The backup battery kicked on. Emergency beacons lit the hallway like a submarine movie. The sonar still worked. Barely. It showed a single shape below us. Massive. Stationary. But changing. It wasn't a whale. Too large. No fluke. No spine. Just curves. Like a sphere. Or a dome. Kaminsky stared at the screen and whispered. It's breathing. He was right. The pressure increased rhythmically. In. Out. Something was down there. Not moving. Just waiting. We argued. I said we had to leave. He refused. Said this could rewrite oceanography. The biology of deep-sea respiration. Possibly even redefine cognition. This isn't a trench, he said. It's a mouth. He was serious. And worse, he was right. Because that night, when I stood on deck again, I felt it. The air changed. The sea tilted. And the stars disappeared. Like something had risen between us and the sky. At first, I thought it was a trick of the eyes. No horizon, no reference, just black sky and blacker sea. But then I noticed the stars weren't twinkling behind the clouds. There were no clouds. There was just something above us. Huge. Still. Blocking out constellations one by one. I ran below deck. Kaminsky was staring at the sonar. His face was damp with sweat, or maybe seawater. The signal was looping now, spinning a slow circle, showing not one shape below us, but many. Concentric arcs. Like a fingerprint pressed into the ocean floor. It's not just breathing, he said softly. It's listening. I asked him what that meant. He didn't answer. Instead, he played back the sonar ping. It echoed once, then again. But the second echo was wrong. It had a delay. A reply. A low vibration, not quite sound. Subsonic. Felt in the bones more than the ears. The pitch of something that should not be capable of voice. And embedded in that hum was a pattern. A call and response. Something had responded to our sonar. Something deep. And it was still listening. Kaminsky smiled. I think it's mimicking us. I slapped the screen shut. We're leaving. Now. He didn't resist. We fired up the trawler, turned due west. I kept my eyes on the sky. Whatever had risen was gone now. Or higher. Or submerged again. But the ocean no longer behaved. Waves collapsed in slow motion. Like they were reluctant. Like time was bending just around us. Then we saw the birds. Dozens of them, circling. Gulls, terns, but flying wrong. Moving in wide spirals without flapping, held aloft by air that didn't stir. Like puppets with invisible strings. They landed on the deck. One by one. Watched us. Didn't blink. Kaminsky leaned toward one. It opened its beak. And from it came the sonar ping. Our ping. Imitated perfectly. He stumbled back. I grabbed an oar and swung wildly. The birds scattered, not in panic, but precision. They knew we were afraid now. That night, Kaminsky vanished. I woke up to silence. His bunk was empty. Shoes lined up. Glasses folded neatly beside the sink. And water on the floor. I ran outside. There were no signs of struggle. Just a single bird perched on the bow rail. Watching me. It opened its mouth. And from deep in its throat, I heard Kaminsky's voice. "It's not a trench." I tried to scream. Couldn't. Instead, I drove the boat without thinking. I don't remember how long. Hours. Days. GPS flickered nonsense. The compass spun endlessly. Food went stale overnight. But eventually, I saw the coastline. It looked smaller than it should have. Tilted. Like the sea itself hadn't forgotten what it had almost swallowed. I didn't tell anyone what happened. The boat was impounded, picked clean by university staff. They said Kaminsky must have fallen overboard, but the weather records showed clear skies. I didn't contradict them. I wanted to forget. But I can't. Because sometimes, when I'm near water, any water, I see bubbles. Not many. Just one or two. Always in pairs. As if something is still breathing far below the surface. Waiting for another voice to mimic. And every now and then, just on the edge of hearing, I catch a sonar ping. Not from above. Not from equipment. But from inside my own chest. The buoy wasn't on any of our charts. We were a week into a solo crossing, cargo and research gear from Vancouver to Tokyo. Just me and a rotation of autopilots aboard the Arroyo. Flat sea. Endless horizon. No contact for 3 days. Then, just after dawn, I spotted it. A bright orange drift buoy bobbing maybe 50 meters off the port bow. I didn't think much of it at first. Plenty of gear ends up floating out here. But this one was different. It wasn't drifting. The water was calm, no current, but it stayed exactly where it was. I passed within 10 meters. The thing looked old. Faded. Scratches all over. Solar panel cracked. The kind of equipment that's meant to be retrieved or logged by satellite. But it wasn't transmitting. No beacons. No ID code. Just a rusted black stencil near the base that read C1M0TH. I stopped the engines. Let the Arroyo drift. Every part of me said not to. But I turned around. The buoy was gone. Just gone. No wake. No trace. I didn't sleep that night. Something about it, the way it sat in the water too still, like it had chosen to be seen, gnawed at me. At 2:37 a.m., the radar chirped. One contact. Directly off the stern. I ran up to the bridge. It was back. The buoy. 30 meters off. No drift. No signal. No light. Just waiting. I swept it with the spotlight. It didn't respond. No beacon, no data pulse. But now I could see something new, etched into the metal beneath the code, a crude spiral. Like someone had scratched it by hand, dozens of times, until it scarred the paint. I considered tossing a line. Hauling it aboard. Then it spoke. A voice came through the comms. Not a hail. A whisper. "Captain." That's all it said. My hands froze on the controls. The radio wasn't tuned to any open channel. I checked the input, dead. Then the voice came again. "Come below." It sounded like me. Not someone like me. Me. Exact cadence. My voice. My intonation. Whispering to itself. Repeating the words. I cut power to the comms. Pulled the breaker. Yanked the wires. Still, the voice continued. From inside the walls. From the bulkhead. From beneath the floor grates. Come below! I went outside again. The buoy was even closer now. 15 meters. Still no waves. Just water. Glossy and silent. I turned on the spotlight again. And the spiral had changed. There were symbols now. Shapes. Eyes. Teeth. Faces with no features. A human figure drawn over and over, smaller each time, curling into itself, until it vanished into a single black dot. I blinked. And it was gone again. Just water. But the voice hadn't stopped. And now it wasn't alone. There were more voices now. Some spoke in gasps. Others in sing-song, as if reciting nursery rhymes through gurgling mouths. But all of them came from nowhere. Not the radio. Not the speakers. From the ship itself. I tried to write it off. Pressure changes, cabin stress, auditory hallucination. But I could feel them. Tiny vibrations in the metal. Like the voices weren't sounds but tremors, coded messages the hull was trying to translate. That's when I checked the ballast gauges. They were filling. Rapidly. The Arroyo had a sealed bilge system. Nothing should have been entering. But tank by tank, it was rising. Not seawater, colder. Measured 29 degrees Fahrenheit. Below freezing. And it was rising into the crew quarters. I raced below deck. The bulkheads were sweating. Condensation thick as oil. The air smelled like crushed coral and decay. And there, standing in the middle of the passage, was a buoy. Not floating. Standing. Upright. On the metal floor. Exactly like the one from the sea. Same markings. Same etched spiral. Same silent, waiting presence. I reached for it, and the lights cut out. Total darkness. And in that blackness, the voices stopped whispering. They spoke. All at once. One phrase. Open the deep. Then I felt something cold touch my hand. Not wet, cold, like submerged metal. I turned on my flashlight. I was alone. No buoy. No water. Just condensation streaking down the walls like tears. I locked the door to the upper deck and rigged an emergency beacon. I'd hit it in the morning, I told myself. Call in a mechanical fault. Get airlifted. Abandon ship. But at 4:12 a.m., the Arroyo began to move. On its own. I watched the autopilot flicker to life. The wheel turned without input. Thrusters engaged. We changed course, slowly veering back toward the buoy. Except it wasn't a buoy anymore. It was a shape. Larger. Rising. No light. Just silhouette. A vertical pillar of rusted metal and barnacles, far taller than any buoy had a right to be. And as it surfaced, something spilled from its sides. Objects. Human-sized. Bodies. Wrapped in life vests. Bloated. Each one bearing a single marking across their chests, C1M0TH. I tried to reverse engines. Manual override. Nothing worked. Every screen flashed a single phrase. Open the deep. I grabbed a crowbar and smashed the NAV console. Sparks flew. Alarms blared. But the ship didn't stop. The shape kept rising. And then it breathed. No mistaking it. A single, guttural exhalation, so massive, it sent spray in all directions. It wasn't gas. It was air. Stale and ancient, thick with rot. The kind of air that had never touched sunlight. I collapsed to the floor, choking. My eyes watered. My vision blurred. And then the hatch beneath me buckled. The ballast tanks, sealed, began to crack. And from the grates I saw eyes. Not glowing. Just open. Watching. Hundreds of them. All looking up. I blacked out. When I came to, the Arroyo was adrift again. Sunlight broke the clouds. No voices. No pressure. The NAV was fried. The engines dead. But the sea was calm. Except the buoy was gone. No wreckage. No oil. Nothing. I floated into port 4 days later. Malnourished. Dehydrated. Raving. They thought I'd been hallucinating. Stress. Isolation. Open sea madness. They took the ship. I let them. But sometimes, when I sleep near water, I dream in sonar. And the pings don't echo. They answer. From far, far below.